To get started, how to be found on Google. This presentation is all about SEO. And so first, I'm going to introduce myself and the Mountain Mojo team and my co-presenter. We're a marketing agency based out of Flagstaff. We focus on, our mission is socially responsible, and our focus is to deliver, results for our clients, whether that means store visits, purchases for their e-commerce store, leads for their service business. We do the full service marketing programs for them, including SEO, SEM, websites, graphic design, branding, and all that stuff. So I'm super grateful that I get to present about SEO specifically today, because that's one of my passions. I want to move to the next slide, please. We're going to cover SEO. What is it? Why does it matter? So the basics of SEO, some on-page and off-page basics for SEO, some easy wins if you want to optimize your website for SEO, some really simple keyword research for targeting your SEO efforts, some information about creating a content strategy and how to build content that improves your SEO, and some more information about how to get those juicy links that improve your SEO most of all. And then we also have a worksheet. We won't be reviewing the worksheet as we go through the presentation, though if you want to have it up, the topics on the worksheet will be covered in the presentation. I encourage you to check that out after the presentation, or if you can while the presentation is ongoing, because a lot of those exercises are really helpful for coming up with your SEO and your content strategy, and solidifying what are your action items if you want to make some strides in your SEO. So to introduce Aaron and myself, I'm a digital marketing consultant. I've been doing digital marketing for the better part of a decade, and I'm just a total nerd when it comes to online marketing. Besides that, love to get outdoors. And my co-presenter, Aaron, is our lead SEO person at the agency. He's also a total SEO nerd, and he helped me put together this presentation today. So thanks a lot, Aaron. So what is SEO? We have a little poll question there. If you guys want to volunteer your website or your URL to be used in an example later, just plop it into the chat. And then when we do some of these SEO tests and audits later on, we can use your website as an example. That is, if you'd like. We also have another poll question here is, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your familiarity with SEO? 1 being slim to none, while 10 being an expert level. And that really helps us get a sense for how to format my explanations, praise my explanations. So SEO it stands for search engine optimization. And so on search engines, you have ads, and then you have the organic, the free results. And so SEO is 100% focused on those organic, free, natural results. Like, we aren't paying for those clicks. And so everything that we can do to optimize our natural SEO results is, our natural search results is SEO, and everything else that's paid, that would be advertising. So we're going to focus on the natural stuff. One metaphor that I like to talk about when I'm talking about the basics of SEO is that it's a lot like car maintenance. It's never set it and forget it. The technology for websites and browsers and the internet is always changing. And so that means that we have to do our oil changes, our tire rotations, transmission flushes, car washes, etc. And so those types of maintenance, what they are, you want to move to the next slide?
Mike, did you want me to share the SEO poll real quick?
Yeah, if you would, please.
Okay. We've got it up. I'll give everyone maybe 30 seconds real fast to provide their responses, and then I'll end the polling and share it with the group.
Thank you, Megan. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind, please answering your familiarity on the poll. So what are those car maintenance? What is that website SEO maintenance that you have to do regularly to stay on top of the fitness of your website? One would be new content, images, graphics, staying up to date there. It looks like we have a pretty nice spread of experience. No one's overly confident, and we got a bunch of people that are really new to SEO. So that's helpful for me to know so that I can use as many simple metaphors as possible and in-depth explanations that are tuned to your experience. As far as other car maintenance things, new website copy, new blog posts and articles, new links. See, all this new is that Google is looking for signals, as I like to call them, for what's changing on your site, that you are updating your site. And that's huge for Google to assess whether you're up to date. And so then I think it goes without saying, fixing any errors. So if there was a link that is now broken, maybe it went somewhere else on your website where that page doesn't exist, or it went to another website where that website doesn't exist. And then fixing any page speed or performance issues. So as the technology improves and gets updated, like I was saying before, browsers and internet technology, then we're gonna wanna make sure our website is up to date for all those technologies, because it can just get incrementally slower as browsers progress and our websites do not progress with them. So those little fixes over time can be super important. Can you move forward? So search ranking is the measure of our success for SEO. It's not an exact measure of the traffic that you'll get, but it's a measure of where on the search results page our website appears. And so if you move forward, we have a few examples of what search ranking is. So if I searched for how much wood could a woodchuck chuck, we can see our example here is, it shows this knowledge panel box in position 0. So that's not position 1, that's an answer provided by Google. And then position 1 is the one immediately below that poetry foundation, and then Wikipedia, and then ThoughtCo below it. And so it's super important to not only get onto the first page like we're showing here, it's great to show up in the knowledge panel, but it's so important to be showing up in these top few positions, because position 1 really gets the most amount of clicks. We're talking 90% of clicks are going to that position 1 result, and then 10% are split between the next 9 results on that page. So optimizing for position 1 is really how we win on SEO. Can you move forward? So the way Google determines what your SEO is by using crawlers. And so they have their robots that run through your site semi-regularly. And so if you have a site that gets updated daily, Google's going to set its crawler to crawl your website and check for any new content daily. If your website gets updated less often than that, then Google might be checking your site maybe once a month, and they're going to be checking all of those things that I mentioned earlier for new content, for updated content, for new images, for any errors that might be happening, for any links to your site from other places on the web. That's how they determine that. So why does SEO matter? Well, SEO is Google is the store sign on the internet superhighway. It's the billboard ad. So we can drive revenue with the traffic that we gain from search engines. And that can be extremely powerful for brick and mortar stores, for getting walk-in traffic, for people searching stuff like shoe store near me, for service-based businesses, such as lawyers, a lawyer near me, or a criminal attorney near me, and for e-commerce businesses, where to buy an umbrella online. If we're showing up in those search results on that first page, that can lead to revenue for our businesses. So 93% of all online experiences begin with a search engine. People are going to Google to find the answers that they need, and they're not going to Facebook. They're not going to, you know, ask their friends or email. They're going straight to Google to ask those questions. And so showing up on that first page can be huge. The second statistic I find fascinating is 35% of all clicks are on mobile. So 35% of those search clicks are coming from phones these days, and we'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about mobile responsiveness as it relates to SEO. And then organic search, this 95% of all web traffic originates from a search engine. So people aren't typing in your URL into the browser bar. A lot more often, they're going to Google and they're typing in your URL into the search bar, which is extremely common with people who are a little bit less savvy with search engines. Can you move forward? Businesses that have an SEO optimized website bring in twice as many customers than those that do not. Especially if you're getting on position 1, you're winning out way over your competitors, especially in a local area. So this graph I thought was really interesting. It shows an e-commerce website where we can see the amount of revenue generated based on how much time a user has spent on a page. And so we can see the longer a user spends on a page, the more money they spend with this e-commerce store. And so the key to that is good content. And so this is how optimizing for SEO and sending those signals to Google and keeping them on our site with great content can improve our online results, our revenue results online, our business goals. I just saw a question. This presentation will be emailed to you guys after the presentation as a PDF. Does anybody have any questions about the basics so far before I move on? You can type them into the chat box, by the way, and I'll see them as they pop up. You can move forward, Aaron. So first of all, on page and off page, this is how we segment SEO action items. We have everything that we can do on our website and everything that we can do off our website. And so that's the difference between on page and off page. And so before we go any further, I'd like to talk about black hat and white hat. White hat is everything that Google or Bing, the other major search engine, explicitly tells us is good for our ranking. And black hat is everything Google tells us is bad for our ranking. There's a whole lot of gray area in between that Google hasn't been explicit about. But when you work with an agency like Mountain Mojo Group, you're going to want to be making sure that everything is white hat. We only want to be working with what Google explicitly tells us is good, because if we start to do anything seedy or any schemes or anything like that, it might work in the short term, but it probably will not work in the long term. And that's where black hat really bites back. It's a double-edged sword. We don't want Google to penalize our business. And so this next example, I think, is a good example of an obvious black hat technique. It's not so malicious, it's just not great content. I'm going to read off this paragraph. We sell cat toys for your cat. Our cat toys are handmade by our cat toys partners. Our cat toys are, oh geez, I can't even get through it. So you can see how that's what we might call keyword stuffing. It's better to just write naturally, and our keywords will naturally appear in our copy as long as we're talking about our products and our services. Doing stuff like this doesn't fool Google, and it doesn't fool the readers of our website. We want to give them the best experience possible, and Google knows how to determine that. So when we do keyword stuffing like this, it's not to anybody's benefit. This might have worked in 2001, but it certainly doesn't work in 2020. So as far as the basics of on-page, we're going to go through a couple of examples. Everything that you can do directly on your site, again, so content changes for the most part. So good content, or maybe some of you have heard content is king. Good content is kind of a big deal. So on-page SEO includes, content on every single one of your page, target keywords on each one of your pages, responsiveness, that's how your website looks on a mobile device or on a tablet, the structure of your site, the speed of your site, metadata, URL structures, and the security of your site. This HTTPS is the security certificate. So we're going to go through each one of these in the on-page basics in this section. So when we're talking about good content, usually we can do a gut check is if we'd want to read it, or if someone we know would want to read it, it's probably good content. And so good content is original. It answers the questions that our users have about our product or service. It's actionable, meaning that they can go and do something with this, whether that means that they can go buy on your site, or they can go build it themselves, or go take that information and improve their process with it. It's actionable. It's accurate, most of all, full of links and sources to more content, whether that's links to other places on your site or authority resources off-site. It's engaging and thought-provoking. It's topical or timely. So, if it's topical, then maybe it's evergreen, and that refers to something that could be used for a very long time. Or if it's timely, that might be something that's more current, e.g. not stale. And then easy to read. We don't want to use too many big words, jargon, technical stuff that makes people bored when they read it. So in this example, this website, thesimpledollar.com, while it wasn't position 1, its content was able to answer one of those basic questions that people are searching in Google. Is it worth buying a soda stream? And so it was actually picked for the knowledge panel by Google. So this is one of the best places for our website to appear, in this knowledge panel. And so this can only be possible by answering those questions. So, if we're answering those questions in a way that Google determines is superior to all the other websites that are ranking, then we have the bonus SEO to show up in the knowledge panel like this. Here's another example of a website showing up with its steps. WikiHow has showed up in its steps in the knowledge panel. And then the first result also answers the same question. So I like to, when I'm developing content, always think about what questions does my content answer? And when we're thinking about that, we can develop content that naturally enters these knowledge panels, especially if it answers those questions well. Here's an interesting graphic that shows when blogging started and stopped. So this website had started blogging in March 2019, and they had stopped blogging in June 2019. And you can see that Google had recognized that they had started updating their content, and they started getting a ton more traffic immediately. And then it ramped up as they were consistent with their blogging effort. And then unfortunately, they stopped doing blogging in June, and it dipped right back down to where it was before when they started. And so this demonstrates exactly what I was saying before, is that this is not something that you can set it and forget it. Google is constantly going to be looking that you're updating your website with new content. And this is where a blog can be really helpful, so you don't sink back down in the rankings and Google doesn't stop sending you the traffic that they once were. Megan, if you wouldn't mind asking that question about how many of you have a blog or write a blog? Thank you. Can you click over to the next slide? So when it comes to black hat for content, we're going to want to avoid duplicate content on your site. So that's anywhere where any significant paragraphs are exactly the same on multiple pages of your website. I'm not talking about the privacy policy in the footer or the menu at the top. more specifically, any significant content that's the meat of your page. Here we have the poll results. Looks like most people have a blog, but aren't updating it as often as they like. And some people want a blog, and there's a few of us who probably don't need a blog for our website. That's good to know. And I'm seeing a couple questions come in. Give me a second. So this is a good question about a blog. Gina asked, should a blog be a specific part of your website, or can you use something like Blogger and link to it? So it's definitely preferable for your blog to be a part of your website. And that's because Google will not apply the same SEO power to a blog that is not on your domain as they will to a blog that is on your domain. That doesn't mean that your blog could not be sending traffic to your website and you couldn't be sending traffic to your blog that's on another website. It's just really preferable for SEO and for ranking on Google that your blog lives on your site. Hope that answers your question. Black hat for content, getting back to black hat, unoriginal content. So I think this is pretty obvious. We don't want to be plagiarizing anybody. And thin content, we're going to want to make sure if we're writing articles or we're answering any questions or really any of our product or service pages, we're going to want to make sure that they have a minimum of about 300 words. And that's an average that we've pulled from Google. And Google has been explicit about telling us that pages that do not have so much content do not rank as well. In fact, we're usually aiming for about 1,000 words for our content that we produce at the agency for our clients. So here's another example. What we're seeing is a screenshot of Google search. And so what was searched here is hardware store and Flagstaff. And so that's our target keyword. And we can see what shows up first is actually a client of ours at Mountain Mojo Group that we're extremely proud of. This is Homeco, our Flagstaff local hardware store. And so they're showing up in the first position for hardware store in Flagstaff. And so it's a part of our SEO strategy to target that term. So when we're developing content, when we're coming up with a plan, that's our target keyword. So this is an important warning, guys. Don't just throw keywords on your site. Try to make it as natural as possible. If we're writing good content about our products and our services, we will hit those target keywords naturally. So if we're a vacation rental company in Flagstaff, we can write about vacation rentals in Flagstaff, and Google knows that the synonym for that is Airbnb in Flagstaff. They know the synonyms VRBO in Flagstaff. They know, for example, if someone is from Great Britain and they might call it a flat rental instead. Google knows about that. We don't have to stuff our content and say stuff like, we are proud of our vacation rentals in Flagstaff. If you're interested in a flat rental in Flagstaff, then maybe you can check out our listings on Airbnbs in Flagstaff. That is just gives me a headache when I read stuff like that. So we can rely on Google to know what the synonyms are. And if we are speaking intelligently about our products and services, we're going to naturally hit those keywords as we write more and more content. Can you move forward? Again. So this is another black hat example. These are hidden keywords at the bottom of the page. We can see this is another example of stuffing for a poker website. Google is not fooled by stuff like this. So this might have worked in 2005 when this website was made, but it doesn't work anymore. Adding a bunch of keywords to the bottom of your site is going to get recognized by Google as a spam tactic. And could potentially penalize your website. Mobile responsiveness. So in the example here, we actually have a web page that Mountain Mojo Group built for the Page Lake Powell Balloon Regatta. And we can see in this example that the site looks great on a mobile phone, on a tablet, and on a desktop. So Google actually prioritizes mobile responsiveness. So that's why we focus so much of our efforts on making sure the sites that we build look good on mobile phones. And that should be important for you when you're looking at your website critically and thinking about ways that you can improve it. How does it look on mobile? So here's some interesting statistics about mobile responsiveness. So 400% of website traffic goes to non-responsive sites versus goes to responsive sites versus non-responsive ones. What that means is essentially 75% of web traffic these days is happening on mobile phones. And if people go to your website and it's not easy to use on a mobile phone, they leave. And 94% of users negatively judge websites that are not responsive. They think they're old school. So Megan, if you wouldn't mind putting out a simple poll, how does your website look on a mobile phone? Maybe you could rate your website on a 1 to 5 or good to bad. Perfect. This can be a pain point for a lot of websites. I just saw a really good question come in from Stephanie McCarthy about how Google recognizes synonyms and keywords. So her question was, does Google recognize bike and bicycle as synonyms? Absolutely. So Google definitely recognized bike and bicycle as synonyms. At the same time, we're going to want to make sure the context around our terms bike and bicycle are there, because if we're using the term bike, Google also understands that that could be a synonym for a motorcycle. So, you know, the rest of our content really informs Google as to whether or not our site is about bikes, bicycles, motorcycles, etc. And oh, we have some interesting polling results. Looks like a good more than half of us have made sure that our websites look good on mobile, and some of us, you know, feeling like we need to make some adjustments on our website to make sure they look good on mobile. So that should really be probably one of your first action items, making sure you have a mobile responsive website. And to those of you who do, some of the other items on this presentation will be your focus. Can you move forward, Aaron? So when we talk about site structure, we want to make sure our information is easily accessible just by the very way it's organized on our site. So this is an example site structure where we have our home page, and then we have our main menu, and we have our submenus. And so, for example, if we're looking at our services column on the left, we have our services, and then we have our sub pages that are contained within a drop-down of that menu that are more specific about each one of those services. And so this just makes our website really easily organized and easily navigated if people are looking for something specific on your site. And a good metaphor that we like to use when we're talking about that is the site structure should essentially be a pyramid with the most common denominator information, the most commonly accessed and asked questions is answered on the home page, and then category pages split it out, and then to the more specific information at the base that forms the real meat of the site. So people coming for specific questions, the user experience would be that they land on the home page, they can easily figure out which category to go to, and then easily figure out which sub page to go to get information about where to find, to get information about whatever they're interested in. So site speed is huge when it comes to ranking your website. We want our websites to load fast. I know I get frustrated when a website doesn't load as fast as I'd like. So Google is actually checking that, and we're going to go through that later and see how our websites look. I have some interesting statistics about how site speed affects the way you rank on, I think it's the next slide. So 47% of people expect a site to load in less than 2 seconds. I would say I'm maybe even more impatient than that. And 40% of people will abandon it if it takes longer than 3 seconds. So We're going to check our site speed in a minute, and we're going to send a link in the chat so we can check the speed of our site. Can you move slides? Thank you. I would like to do a poll question about what is your familiarity with altering meta tags and meta descriptions?
Oh, give me just 1 second. It looks like that was one that I missed. I'm going to write it up and I'll have it out in just a sec.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. So these are examples of where meta tags and meta titles and meta descriptions show up on Google search and why they're so important. So in our result here, we actually have our agency's website showing up in search, and the page title is this header of our search result listing, and the meta description is this main description of the search result. So it actually somewhat acts like a listing. A meta title or a meta description is not something that we would was not something that would be visible on our website, but it would be very visible on our listing in the way it appears on Google. It's essentially ad text there on Google. And so on our website, and this is our own agency website that we're using in this example, we can see that the page title actually doesn't appear anywhere on the page itself, but it does appear up in this tab. So this is a screenshot of Google Chrome, and you can see that the page title appears up in the tab. And then the permalink is what the URL structure looks like, and we'll get to that, how to structure that in a minute. Thanks, Megan, for asking this question. What is your familiarity with altering meta tags or meta descriptions? Very familiar to not at all familiar.
We've got a good variety popping up. I'll give it 10 more seconds.
Great. Yeah, we got a good spread here. It looks like we have almost half of the people are not at all familiar. So I will say that for those of you who are a little bit more familiar, things have changed in the past few years when it comes to meta titles and meta descriptions. A lot of websites are running on outdated information when it comes to what Google actually cares about when it comes to your meta titles and meta descriptions. They are not looking at which keywords are included in your meta titles and descriptions. That used to be something that they'd look at. So when we talked about our target keywords before, and I was saying, you know, for example, our target keyword could be vacation rental in Flagstaff. We don't have to include that in our meta titles and descriptions for Google to figure out that that's what our website is about and to rank for that. What they're looking for, more importantly, is really good titles and really good descriptions that get people to click. So we want clickable, informable meta titles and meta descriptions, because that's how our web page listing is going to appear in Google. And for those of you who are maybe a little bit less familiar or not at all familiar, if you're on WordPress, there are some really handy plugins. We love this Yoast plugin. And so we're gonna have that when we send out the presentation later. There's actually gonna be a handful of links to other plugins. And if you're on a web builder like Wix or Squarespace, then it's handled as an out-of-the-box solution. You don't need to do any type of plugin, but you do have to find where to update the meta titles and meta descriptions on your site, because that's really easy to do on Wix and Squarespace as well. So URL-friendly structures or human-friendly structures are super important, not just for the people visiting your site, but Google also takes that as a signal that you're doing all the right things to make your website usable and friendly for visitors. And so in this example, we have two URLs, one's friendly and one's not. The readable one is the friendly one, and the one that looks like a credit card number, one that nobody could possibly remember, that's the unfriendly URL. And so it's fairly common for websites to have these sort of credit card numbered URLs, and it's a matter of getting into the settings of your website and switching that off so that you can use a more semantic or human-friendly URL. And that makes it so people can actually remember the URL if they have to. And then the last thing is Ssl certificates. And so many of you, if you've ever visited a website and gotten a warning or been in the browser bar and seen that red exclamation point inside a triangle, you've noticed that Google Chrome and other browsers are increasingly warning users about sites that are not SSL secured. And so this is super important because Google is now defaulting to SSL secured. And so your site may not rank at all if it doesn't have that. And what the Secure Certificate does is it says that your site is trusted to take personally identifiable information. So even if your site is not taking any personally identifiable information, it's important to get that SSL certificate. And it's also an easy win for your site. So this is something that you can get set up in minutes. And usually it's something you can get for free or relatively cheap from your host. So that's an easy win to get that up. And if you don't have it, it should only take a few minutes. So off-page SEO. Off-page SEO covers everything that you can't do on your website. It's everything you've done off your website. So Megan, if you would please put up the poll about how many of you have gotten a great link that sent a ton of traffic to your site. And so this will be two-part. If you guys have gotten a great link, please, if you know where that link came from, if you wouldn't mind sharing it in chat so you can tell us where you got that link.
And I hope I interpreted this question properly, that it's a link someone clicked from a different website that took them to their website, correct?
Yep, you did great.
Oh, awesome.
So some examples of off-site links that might send a ton of traffic to your site is a news publication. If you have any media written about you, if you have a local, Flagstaff Business News has written about you, or Arizona Daily has written about you and it has a link to your website, then that might cause a spike in traffic. Or if a really prominent influencer in your industry has given a shout out on their social media, then that might also send some traffic. Oh, looks like we have some linking experts. We have a handful of people who got some intentional links that have sent a bunch of traffic. And then we have a handful of us who are getting traffic, but we don't know where it's coming from. I wish we had time on this presentation to go into Google Analytics and how to identify where our main traffic is coming from. That would be so cool. Before I move on to off page, I got a good question from Mike Russell about hyphenation and URLs. So he asks, does the hyphenation between URL structures still allow Google to find specific words in your URL structure? So good question, Mike. Google interprets hyphens in your URL as spaces. So as long as your words are spaced out by those hyphens, it's going to interpret them as separate words. So that's a good question, because if we're coming up with good titles that include our keywords, then Google is going to be looking at that as a way to determine what our page is about. I hope that answers your question, Mike. Can you move to the next slide, please, Aaron? So off page includes these three areas. It's links mostly, and then trust. And so what trust means is how trustworthy your website is and how trustworthy the resources and other websites that link to your website. And then social. Can you move to the next slide? So there's two types of links that we can influence, and I think it's fairly obvious. Internal links, those are technically on page. It's super easy for us to get on-site links. And then there's the external links, links to our website from other places on the web. Can you move to the next slide? Yeah, so getting internal links is a piece of cake. We just want to remind you that linking to other parts of your website is an important part of building that content. And so if you're writing an article or blog about something, you're going to want to be linking to your product pages and your service pages as they relate to that blog topic. And Martha just sent a good question that I'm going to answer in a moment. Getting external links is not so easy. So we're going to cover a few of the tactics that we have for getting external links. And this, I could almost have a 9-week course about getting external links, but there's some low-hanging fruit that you can get those links really easily. And so we're going to cover what that low-hanging fruit is on this presentation. So these common external link sources are business directories or citations. So that could be local businesses or industry-specific business directories. Bloggers in your industry, and news and media outlets are probably the most common 3. And when we're talking about trust, we're talking about the authority that your website projects. And it's really hard to measure, but this is why our aim is always at good content that answers people's questions. Because if our aim is to answer people's questions and to provide good content, then our trust factor will increase. And by doing all of these things together, we're hopefully sending the signals to Google that our website is trustworthy because we check our facts, because we link to places that know about the same things that we know, because we're updating our site regularly, because we have social media, because we have our phone numbers and our business addresses listed on the site. Trust is hard to measure, but we can often do a gut check of whether or not we would trust a site by asking ourselves, would I be comfortable giving my credit card to this website? That's how I like to do my gut check. And then trustful sites have lots of links, lots of content, lots of engagement with users, and a history. So sites that have been around for a long time, that have been updating for a long time, that get tons of links to them and have tons of links out are some of the most trustful sites. And so in this example is The Oatmeal, a popular online comic that has had so many memes and so many viral comics since forever that they have a very high trust rating. And The Oatmeal also maintains social media, and they're very regular on their social media, and they get tons of likes, engagements, and comments. And so that's a huge signal that they're also trustworthy, that they're also maintaining their social media in a responsible way. And so Martha had asked a question about social media and the way it relates to SEO. And she asks, you mentioned social media in relation, will a link from an influencer on social media impact SEO directly? And so it looks like Martha is maybe a little bit more familiar with SEO than some other people, because she says, I asked because I assume it would be a no-follow link. Yes, it would be a no-follow link. So a no-follow link, Google says, does not pass SEO juice. However, it is still a signal from Google. And so if you're getting links from anywhere on social media, as long as it's a clickable link that will take to your site, Google will be checking that, and they will be assigning some SEO ranking factor to that link. And so if it's from a more popular influencer, most likely it will get rated better by Google, because that more popular influencer will have a higher trust rating than maybe a micro influencer would. I hope that answers your question, Martha. Does anybody have any specific questions about some of the off-page things that we just covered? Feel free to input them into the chat, and I'll circle back to any of them as I see them come in. Aaron, can you move to the next slide, please? So now that we've gone over the basics of on-page and off-page SEO, I just wanted to give actionable wins for you to take care of immediately after this presentation. So these easy wins, you should be able to get them done in under an hour for each of them. Or, you know, if it's maybe you have a bigger website, maybe it's a longer effort, and you can come up with a strategy today and then break it down into smaller pieces so you can get those easy wins over the next couple weeks. So these easy wins are a good site structure, a blog if you want one. A mobile responsive design is so important. That's how your website looks on a mobile phone or a tablet. The minimum of 300 words per page with those target keywords included, but not overfilled. Loading fast in less than 2 seconds. An Ssl certificate, those human-friendly, readable URLs, and then a way to insert metadata into your site. So we're going to go through each one of these easy wins. So on your worksheet, there's actually a section for drawing out your sitemap, your site structure. And so I would encourage you to think about categories and subcategories and to group them the way that, you know, your customers might go looking for that information. And so our goal here is to have our most accessed categories at the highest level in our menu, and then with subpages with the information they're looking for that's maybe a little bit more specific, but a specific product or service. And so this is a great example of a good site structure. 1 second, I'm getting a delivery I got to sign for. I'm sorry, guys. It's an important delivery.
If you guys have any questions in the meantime, we could take them right now.
Sorry about that.
He's going to get into some good programs. We just had a question come in from Mike.
Awesome.
He's going to get into some programs to structure it out.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, guys. I had a FedEx guy at the door. Got to go get that. So another easy win is having these main pages on your site. So this hits about the most important points for most service and local businesses. Having your service pages and your product pages, obviously, a blog that gets updated regularly, an About Us page that says, you know, everything that you want to tell people about your brand or what you do and why you do it and your mission, your portfolio, and if you have any, or if you have multiple locations, your locations page, and a contact page with a form for reaching you. I gotta catch my breath. I just ran to the door. So we have an analysis tool linked here. Aaron, if you wouldn't mind sharing, or Megan, if you wouldn't mind sharing that in chat so that people can analyze their content while we're online here. This is a thin content checker. So this will check your website. If you put in your URL, it'll check your website for which pages have 300 words or less. I'm not sure about a good program to generate a whiteboard of site structure. I think I like to use like flowchart software. So Balsamic is one that I had used before, and Google has what's that tool that Google uses to create flowcharts? You know, however you want to do it, I like to do it with bubbles, essentially, just like in that graphic. And I think it's just a helpful tool for visualizing. It's a helpful exercise for visualizing how your site structure should be. Aaron, if you wouldn't mind looking up if there's a tool out there and maybe linking it in the chat, because I can't think of one off the top of my head.
One I like to use is Adobe XD, if you have Adobe programs. It's really easy to map stuff out, but a really easy way to do it is just doing it in an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheet and just using those cells to write it in.
Yeah, I think, whatever you're most comfortable with, I think, Aaron, those are good tips. Adobe XD, if you have the Adobe suite. And then, whatever you're most comfortable with, Excel or Google Sheets for organizing that. It's just important to have your pyramid structure with your top level, with the most common information, and then your categorized information, and then the sub pages. Can you go to the next slide? I hope you all have seen that link. So here, I was talking about this earlier. Here we have a link to Google's Pagespeed Insights tool. So if you would, Megan or Aaron, to share the link to Google Pagespeed Insights in the chat, and then to share that poll question about what is your page speed. And so, I think 1, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. And we'll check those really quick. I just shared it in the, looks like Aaron shared it in the chat. So that actually should take a second. So I'm not going to rush anybody there because I know it can take a second for page speed to load, and then it does its loading bar as it's checking how quickly your site loads.
I'll go ahead and throw our poll up there. For anybody who was with us on Thursday last week, this is actually the same poll question about how fast your website loads, so you'll have some familiarity with this one.
And I just got a good question in from Martha that I'm going to answer in a second. Oh, another delivery guy's at my door. I'm on a call right now.
Okay, so we're waving you.
No, I'm waving you away.
Come see me.
All right, I'll see you soon. Thank you. I'm a popular guy this morning.
That's the rule of webinars. It's when you're talking to a group of people that your phone rings and your dog starts barking and all that.
Yeah, I'm lucky that my phone hasn't rang. Usually that's the case, but it's been my front door. That's strange. So it looks like we have some results that are a little bit concerning. We have some people that are more than 5 seconds, and we're going to want to talk about, I think maybe you guys are going to want to set up a consultation about how to speed up your website. And then for those of you at the 3 and the under 2 seconds mark, you're doing really good. Can you move to the next one, please, Aaron? So it's easy ways to increase site speed. And so we're going to share this presentation with you. So you're going to have these links here and this as a reference. So for image optimization on WordPress, these are all some plugins, WP Smush and Smush It, and for minifying code. And so what these plugins are doing, the image optimization, what it does is, if we upload a really big image, that will take a long time to load. But usually on our website, we're not using a really big image. It's probably like, about the size of a baseball card. And so what these image optimization plugins do is that when we upload a new image, then it automatically resizes it to the size that we need, so that when we're loading our page, we're not loading a really big image. We're only loading the exact size that we need to display on that website. So that's what image optimization does. And in a very similar way, minifying your code does a similar thing. It takes all of the code across your whole website, and it's usually pulling the code from multiple different resources. It's pulling it from the database, and it's pulling it from this reference point, and it's pulling it from that reference point. And what minifying does is it takes the code that's pulled from all these reference points and it brings it into one document, and it removes all the spaces and erroneous stuff in between all that code, and it makes it as small as possible. And so that can improve your site speed load time by half a second, which is nothing to shake a stick at. And then contacting your website host is a big one. I saw a good question from Mike. Smush is only a WordPress plugin. These are all WordPress plugins. If you're on Wix or if you're on Squarespace or one of the other site builders, unfortunately, they do not give you a lot of control about over minifying code and optimizing images. If you're working with Wix or Squarespace or any of the other builders that are not WordPress, you're going to want to make sure that you upload your image at the right size that you're going to use it at, because they won't necessarily automatically optimize those images. If you're on WordPress, Smush is a great plugin, and same with Smush It and EWWW. And they have free versions as well. So I'm going to address this question from Martha about how many levels of clicks should our site structure have. And so I think she's talking about the depth of our site. And I want to say that, the depth of your site, the information on your site should be accessible with as few clicks as possible. And so the 3 layers is kind of the minimum, but I would say your target should probably be 3 or 4 clicks. And what I mean by that is, if someone's landing on your homepage and they're looking for some specific information, let's try to make sure the specific information they're looking for is 3 or 4 clicks away. And so if you're maybe dealing with a very technical or a very complicated product or service, it might have a lot more depth to it, but we want to make our website as usable and easily accessible as possible. So if we can, we're going to try and make our websites have only 3 clicks to the information that they're trying to access. That's that home page, then the menu with that product or service main page, and then the product or service sub page where they're looking for that specific information. I hope that answers your question, Martha. And then these other easy wins is the Ssl certificate. And so this is a nudge to go, speak to your host, or reach out to your host to install an Ssl certificate if you don't have one. That's that green lock at the top of your browser, in the browser bar. If you don't have an Ssl certificate, it'll show up as an exclamation point inside a red or a yellow triangle. And the other part is human-friendly URLs. And so if you're on WordPress, this is a setting that you can do in your general settings area. You can set your permalink structure, and you're going to want them to be semantic or readable rather than these credit card looking URLs. And then when it comes to inserting metadata into your site, we definitely favor Yoast as a WordPress plugin. This is a plugin that's free. If any of you have WordPress sites, you can go to the plugins area and hit add new and then search for Yoast, and it'll be the first or second one that pops up. And so we actually have a screenshot here of what the Yoast interface looks like. It's really easy to use, and you can enter the meta descriptions and the meta titles and the permalinks here in the Yoast plugin. And then if you're on Wix or Squarespace, they have an internal tool that does this, that handles it. So, I didn't include a screenshot here, but they have really helpful resources on their support forums. So if you Google Wix inserting metadata, then that should come up with the resources that you need to point you in the right direction about editing metadata on your Wix or your Squarespace site. So we have linked here, and if you wouldn't mind, Aaron or Megan, linking to this in the chat. SEO Optimer is a great tool for error checking your site. And so we talked about this earlier as far as like the maintenance that we have to do on a regular basis. And this is especially important if we're updating our site, or if we're adding new content to our site regularly, or if our site has been up for a really long time linking to other places on the web, that we do these error checking, because it can find broken links. That's one of the biggest errors that we find when we're updating sites that haven't been updated in a while is finding a handful of broken links that can be updated. And that's a real simple update. And then missing alt attributes. So alt attributes are, it's a signal to Google, and it's a signal to people that have, that are visually impaired. And so when an image has an alt attribute, it tells Google and it tells the person who has a screen reader what that image is showing. And so Google uses that as a signal as well. So if we're inserting images, and if you're in WordPress and you're inserting images, then you'll notice there's a field when you're inserting the image that says alt text. And it's there on Wix as well when you upload an image, or on Squarespace when you upload an image. As it asks you to upload and insert it onto your page, it will have a field that says, what do you want to caption this image? I'm not talking about the caption. It'll have another field that'll say image alt text. So you just want to describe what's in the image and maybe use your target keyword or a related target keyword. And that sends the signal to Google that, you know, your image is about something relevant. And it also is really helpful for people that are visually impaired because they're using screen readers. And when an image comes up with alt text, they're able to interpret what that image is showing based on your alt text. Can you move to the next one? So now we're going to move on to building a content strategy. So maybe some of you don't have or aren't interested in a blog, but it's an important ranking factor to have a blog or have some type of resource or news that updates regularly with new articles and content. So we're going to talk about how to come up with a content strategy. So these are the questions that we like to ask when we're coming up with a content strategy for our clients. So what do we want our content to do? Do we want to educate? Do we want it to be engaging? Do we want it to be emotional? Who will our content speak to? Who's our target customer? Is it a future customer? Is it maybe someone who's related to our customer? What does our content team look like? And for a lot of us, that'll just be us. But I will say that, you know, coming up, even if it's just a one-person content team, coming up with a content strategy is so important for making assignments to ourselves and for breaking up this massive project, creating a blog, into smaller and more manageable parts. So on the worksheet, we have some information about coming up with a content strategy. And so I encourage you to, you know, I'm going to move through this section as I come up with examples, but I encourage you to use the worksheet to help you come up with those content strategies and those topics and topic clusters. So you're going to want to write out what the goals of your content are, who your audience is, and then to figure out who's responsible, who's on your team, who can write these blogs, edit them, post them, etc. So when it comes to choosing our keywords, this is the base of our content strategy, are our target keywords. And so there's a ton of tools out there for helping with keyword research, and I really wish we had a lot more time to go through keyword research tools. But I'll be honest, as an expert in the industry, oftentimes I like to start with common sense. Aaron, would you go to the next slide? So it's actually fairly easy to use our common sense to come up with a target keyword list, especially we're going to be relying on our own expertise in our products and our services. What do people search in Google to get to our website? What do we want them to search? And so I've included a few examples here. For example, a vacation rental business, your target keywords are going to be vacation rental in Flagstaff, Flagstaff luxury rentals, vacation rentals near Lockett Meadow, 3-bedroom vacation rental in Flagstaff. For an auto glass company, that might be windshield repair near me, windshield replace Flagstaff. And here's a good question: will my insurance cover windshield replacement? And for a restaurant or a pizza restaurant, pizza near me, takeout pizza, flatbread pizza restaurants, Flagstaff, pizza delivery, and gluten-free pizza. And so these are all semi-long-tail keywords or long-tail keywords. And so this is my note at the bottom. We should all be focusing on these long-tail keywords. So what I mean by that is that's a keyword with 3 or more words in it. And so like if our keyword was just vacation rental, that's not specific enough. And if our keyword is maybe a little bit long tail, like vacation rental and Flagstaff, it actually captures our short tail keywords within it. And so that's why we're gonna always wanna focus on our longer tail keywords, because people are going searching for more specific information. We're trying to send these signals to Google about specifically what is the information on our site. And so anything that's maybe 2 words or less, those don't really factor in as target keywords, but you're definitely going to want to use those keywords to make up your target keywords, your long tail keywords. I hope that made sense. So when it comes to putting a content strategy together, we like to think of topic clusters, which is a nice little metaphor for organizing topics around target keywords. Can you move forward, Aaron? So this diagram shows a topic cluster for workout routines. And so this is a way to organize our ideas and the way we come up with articles and blog topics for our website. So in the center, we have our main topic, and this would have been our topic keyword, the one we came up with in our last slide. And then around the periphery, we have 6 other questions that form the cluster of things that people might search, or the questions that they might ask, things that they'll want to know about workout routines. So this is a really helpful website. Megan or Aaron, if you wouldn't mind sharing Answer the Public URL in the chat box. This is a tool that helps us come up with topic clusters. And so if you go to answerthepublic.com and then put in one of the keywords that we just came up with using our common sense, and then the results after it loads will come up a bunch of questions that Answer the Public has come up with that people are actually searching for related to your target keyword. And so those questions that come up on Answer the Public can form your topic clusters. And we definitely don't need a tool for this. We are experts on our products and services. And we know, the questions that people ask when they come in to buy or when they're signing up, those are the questions that we want to answer in our topic clusters. So these diagrams are on your worksheet. So if you want to afterwards, we have, on the worksheet, you can put in your central topic and then organize it based on these 6 clusters surrounding your central topic. So this is a helpful exercise that we use in the agency to come up with topics and content strategies. So we definitely like to come up with multiple topic clusters so we don't run out of ideas. I would definitely encourage people to come up with 3 or 4 topic clusters and then to pick the most attractive or commonly asked questions from those topic clusters, and then to execute on them by writing an article about whatever the topic is in that cluster. So I'd just like to pause for a second. If anybody has any questions about topic clusters or any other easy wins, this is a good time because I'm going to have a chance to answer them. All right, moving on. So when it comes to link building, definitely, like I was saying before, I could run a 9-week course on link building, but there's some easy links to get. So you should be able to come up with an active link plan after this presentation. So links send one of the most important signals to Google. Having other websites linked to your website is the top signal for Google. It sends all of the trust and authority from the website linking to your website. And so if we have a big name website like the New York Times and they have a link to our website, the New York Times is about as high trust as a website can get, then that is way better than if, for example, a local news site like Flagstaff Business News, also a very high trust site locally, but not nearly as high as the New York Times. A link on either of those sites would be beneficial, but I think obviously a link from the New York Times would be way better of a signal. So these are some of the places to look for links, and we've ranked them from best to worst as far as what Google tells us, how they rate links from these places. Government and nonprofit and educational institution sites are the top of the top. If they have that .org, that .edu, or the .gov designation on their domain, then those are going to be the most high trust sites. So getting a link from maybe a local university resource site, or getting a link from a .gov, like a state resource site, is amazing for your SEO. Links from news and media outlets follow quickly behind. And then we have bloggers in your industry, business directories, guest posts, press releases are some of the lowest. And then even lower are comments on other sites or forums. So those are some that you could actually make yourself by posting a link to your website on one of the forums that you frequent. I did put a warning down here about never paying for links. And that's maybe not a never, but don't buy links from anybody unless you really know what you're doing. That is sort of a gray hat, black hat, gray hat scenario. Is if you're buying a link, who's to know what the quality is and how to control that, and what the ROI is on that. But if you know what you're doing and if you know the source, then that can be a way to get some links relatively quickly as well. So since I can't go into so many of these strategies for getting some of these harder links, we're definitely going to go into link building with directories. Aaron, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, I believe I have a list of directories. So these are some good examples of directories that we can get links on really easily. If you don't have any citations or links on these directories already, it should take you less than an hour to get links on all of them. So yellowpages.com, facebook.com is really obvious. Yelp, as much as I don't like them, is a great place to get a citation. Google My Business, this is, if you search in Google Maps, Google My Business is where you can get that listing. The local Chamber of Commerce is a great place to get a link to your business just by becoming a member. Any industry-specific business directories, and so for example, if you're a dentist, that would be the American Dental Association, or if you're a hardware store, that would be the National Retail Hardware Association. And so they have directories on their websites as well, and you get a link by becoming a member there. And then oftentimes they're providing a ton of other resources for your marketing as well. And then there are local business directories. And so this isn't necessarily Craigslist, but lots of locals have a business directory. Lots of local governments have business directories and set up so you can find resources in your local area. And it looks like we have some people sharing some business directories. Mike Russell mentioned the local CVB, essentially the Discover Flagstaff website, is a directory for tourism-based businesses. Thanks, Mike, for that. And the Chamber of Commerce, also, Judy mentioned, she runs the Chamber of Commerce up in Page, so she knows about this stuff. They're always happy to share on social media and in their advertising and newsletters. So if you become a member of the Chamber of Commerce, they're looking out for you and they're sharing information about your business. And so that's a resource that we don't ever want to pass up. Does anybody have any questions about link building, or more specifically directory link building? Can you click through? I think we're getting to nearing the end. So your SEO duties moving forward. And so this is your action items, what you can take out of this presentation and turn into SEO optimization. So you're going to have all the links on this slide. There's some links in here that we're not going to link in the chat, but you want to take this presentation, find this slide afterwards, because this is your action items list. One, if you don't have it already, you're going to want to set up Google Search Console or Google Analytics on your website. And so what those do is they allow you to track how your website is doing in Google and how people are interacting with your website. So there's tons of resources and YouTube videos on that. If you want to work with us, we're happy to set this stuff up as well. Making your site responsive. So if you maybe have an older site that looks great on a desktop, but doesn't look so great on a mobile phone, that's probably going to be one of your first action items. And you know, if you're on WordPress and you're working with a little bit of an older site, you may want to work with a designer or an agency like us to make your site responsive, or to design maybe an updated site for 2020. Building a new or updating your site structure, just thinking about how are people going to find the information on your site. Is it easily organized? Are they going to be able to get from your homepage to the information they're seeking within a few clicks? That's a great site structure. Remember, thinking of that pyramid diagram that we had before. Adding new pages and a blog, making sure everything is above 300 words. And so this feeds into one of our later bullet points down below, which is the content strategy. But more specifically, you know, if we have pages on our site, making sure that they have those 300 words first, and then we're going to be adding new pages. Fixing site speed. We had some tips earlier. If you're working with a WordPress site, using the image optimization plugins, or minifying your code with another plugin, or if you're on a premium host, you can also contact your host and maybe get a dedicated host, or get moved up a tier in the speed of your hosting, and that could also increase the speed of your site. An Ssl certificate, that's an easy win. No matter where you're hosting, that should be provided as either an add-on, whether it's free or relatively cheap. The Ssl certificate is a very necessary signal to Google that your site is secure and trustworthy. Adding the metadata into your website. So this is, if you remember, is how your website shows up in Google search. So it's the title and it's the description of your listing in Google search. And so the reason we want to set this, again, to restate, is because if we don't set our meta titles and descriptions, Google will decide for us. And so Google is using a robot to do that. And let's try and take that out of Google's hands and do our best job to write a really engaging and clickable listing so that we can get people from Google to our website. If we don't do it, Google will most likely just pull whatever the first couple sentences from our website are. Then when it comes to building a content strategy, I cannot encourage enough coming up with a content strategy and then setting an editorial calendar. I know we have a lot of one-person writing teams out here, but it's super important to be planning ahead and breaking these down. And if we were working with a writer, you know, we'd plan it ahead and make sure that they have deadlines that they're aware of. And it's the same way when we're working with ourselves as a writer. Is we want to set deadlines, we want to set the topics beforehand. So when we sit down at the computer with the time that we've blocked to write this blog, we're not staring at a blank page. We already have our idea, our topic cluster. We already have a good idea of who our audience is, what questions we're trying to answer. And that way we can break it down into smaller and smaller steps and make this nebulous project of having an amazing blog into just one easy article at a time. And then using our website grader and SEO Optimer and any of these other tools like Pagespeed Insights to fix errors, broken links, and to analyze the page speed of our site. If you're on WordPress, definitely we can affect page speed with some of these plugins that I mentioned before. If you're on Wix or Squarespace or maybe one of the other web builders, probably cannot influence that as much, although those come pre-built with a lot of the site speed things that you might need, like premium web servers. Does anybody have any final questions? We're gonna have a Q&A session at the end, but if you have any specific questions, this gives us a chance to address those in a moment. All right, Aaron, you want to close it out? We have, I think, a few more slides left. So yeah, this is just a reminder that we were offering 25 consultations, free consultations with people who had signed up first. So if you got an email about that, or if you got a notification about that, then remember to schedule something with us, because we're going to be happy to answer any specific questions you might have about your website. Here, I have a couple questions come in. Judy had a great question. Judy works with the Chamber of Commerce, runs the Chamber of Commerce up in Page, and she has a guide and phishing business. She asks, if I do regular phishing reports with the website and on social media, is that considered blogging? Yes, absolutely. That is exactly the type of signal that Google is looking for. I think if that's all that you're posting, maybe just being a little wordy when you do that is better than not. So, just posting the phishing report as a table is great, but then if you can include a couple of sentences to increase the length of that content, that's even better. But those regular updates are definitely helping with your SEO rankings. Here we have another question from Mike Russell, who seems to be one of our more experienced webmasters. He says, how do you feel about Bing? So Bing is the other major search engine. So Google dominates about 90% of search traffic, with Bing about 10%. And so, when I'm thinking about that, I like to say optimize for Google first and then for Bing. Bing has parallel tools to Google. We recommended Google Search Console, we recommended Google Analytics. Bing has very similar tools, Microsoft Search Console and Microsoft Analytics, that you can use to analyze, but they tend to overlap in the information and the insights that they provide. One key difference between the two platforms, besides Google having a 90% market share on search and Bing only having 10%, is that Bing has a significant market share in business-to-business searches. And the reason for that is that Bing is the default search engine for Internet Explorer. And so many businesses, enterprise businesses, still have Internet Explorer as their default browser. And for these corporations, their browsers are locked down. So if someone's at their office on a locked down computer searching for something, oftentimes they'll be going to Bing rather than Google, just because of the way the IT decisions have been made in their business. I hope that answers both of those questions. I think we maybe have a final slide, Aaron, maybe a thank you slide. Yeah, thank you. Well, I just wanted to say thank you to Coconino Community College, Megan Remington, Kay Liam, and SETI for hosting us today on this presentation. I want to thank Aaron, my co-presenter, for flipping through the slides and for answering many of the questions that came up in chat and teeing me up to answer some of these questions live. And then Sylvia Dieter, who helped me put together this presentation and coordinated it with Coconino Community College and our contacts there.
And Mike, if you don't mind, I'm gonna pop in super quick. I just have a couple of things to say before you make one final call for any other questions. So for everybody who's on here, if you haven't signed up for the Thursday webinar, which is best practices in social media, same time from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., you can still do that. We'd love to have you join us. I think a lot of you already have, so we'll look forward to seeing you then. And we do have another webinar coming up that we're super excited about. We are going to have Amy Dryden. She's a communications faculty with NAU, and she also owns AEC Printing. She's going to be doing a graphic design for advertising and promotion course that starts next Wednesday, May 27th, and it'll go to the following Wednesday, so just those 2 Wednesdays. If you do any kind of promotional work, if you're using Microsoft Word a lot to make flyers, or if you use Photoshop, if you are anywhere in between that and you want to learn something about graphic design and how you can improve it for your business, I hope you'll consider joining us for that, and I'll include some information about how to register for that in a follow-up email. And I think that was everything I had. These all have been recorded, so if anybody is unable to make it to our remaining webinar, you had to leave early, whatever the case may be, we'll make sure we get those recording to all of you guys as well. And I think that'll do it for me. So Mike, if you wanted to close things out with whatever remaining Q&A you have, it's all yours.
Thanks, guys. We had, it doesn't look like too many questions came in after the presentation closed out, but I did see one from Gina. All the recordings are, all the presentations are going to be recorded and emailed. So that one is covered. So even if you can't make it on Thursday, we're going to be sending that out. And then if you guys have any specific questions, or you'd like to set up a consultation with Aaron, myself, or any of the other experts at Mountain Mojo Group, please just shoot over an email. I'm going to be sharing my email in the chat box right now, and we can schedule that the time that's convenient for us, for all of us. I'm just going to give it a second. If anybody has any questions that come up, I'd be happy to answer them live in front of everybody else so they can get the benefit of those answers as well.
And I just wanted to say thank you to Mike. You did a great job today.
Thanks, Aaron. A little bit nervous, especially with that FedEx package that came in the middle of my presentation, but where would we be if these things didn't happen? All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to wish everyone an awesome Tuesday, a very productive SEO optimization session, and I'm looking forward to meeting anybody who reaches out and having those consultations.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and shut this down. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see you on Thursday.